All these MLs who said it was all a bunch of fucking bullshit, none of them have re-examined now that the national security law has been passed, or now that it's illegal to even like boo the national anthem in China. In Hong Kong, that you can go to prison for 2 years for booing during a soccer game because people were protesting during soccer. And that's fucking pissing me off. That people fucking respect these fucks. Hakeem straight up produces a 20 to 30 minute video talking about why you shouldn't support the Hong Kong protesters. And he claims that Hong Kong protesters are requesting that the West invade them. And what's the evidence he shows? Somebody holding a sign like, "Please Trump help." You know what we can do next? We can try to find actually some good down home reporting from Mehdi Hassan. So what Mehdi Hassan would do with these head-to-head series is he would get somebody. It would be some representative of some organization or some politician or somebody, and he would grill them in the hot seat for almost an hour, and you would see these people slowly come undone as he would take the contrary position to what they would have. There's a few that were able to kind of withstand it, but the most of them just got destroyed, man. The Uyghur one? Is there one on Uyghurs? Did he do one on Uyghurs? Did he really? If he did, I missed it. Hong Kong and the Uyghurs. How far will China go up front? Oh, God. I've never seen this one. I have never seen this one. We are watching this right now.
With protests raging in Hong Kong and a brutal crackdown against Uighur Muslims in Xinjiang, how far is the Chinese government willing to go to maintain its iron rule? But first, enemies of the people. That's what Hong Kong's chief executive called protesters who've been demanding greater freedom from Beijing. So is the violence there about to escalate further? And what's the future for China's Uyghurs? This week's headliner, leading pro-government
Mehdi Hassan versus Infrared, oh God.
Chinese commentator and former interpreter to the late President Deng Xiaoping, Victor Gao. Victor Gao, thank you for joining me on UpFront.
So this was the interpreter for Deng Xiaoping. This guy was also on a different Mehdi Hassan show. He was on Head to Head as well, which was also a really good episode, I think. I think he was on Head to Head.
6 months into protests that have rocked Hong Kong, and police repression seems to be escalating by the day. Just last week, a student was shot in the stomach by a police officer, while the Chinese-backed chief executive of Hong Kong, Carrie Lam, declared the protesters enemies of the people. Are you okay with how China and how Chinese-backed authorities in Hong Kong have handled these protests?
Well, first of all, everyone can see with his or her own eyes that violence has been committed on a massive scale. Arson attacks on police officers, attacks on public order, sabotage.
By the way, I like how he starts with the attacks from the protesters, not the attacks on police, not the accusations of sexual assault against female protesters detained by police, not the beatings, not someone getting shot in the stomach. Protesters. And of course there was violence from protesters. That often happens when you don't heed to social issues. The thing is, people think that the way you deal with a riot in the long term is you just keep smashing it. And if you keep stamping it out, riots will go away. And every time somebody tries to have the tough on crime riot approach, I simply ask them this. When has riots ever been stopped by just telling people to go home, and now you're never going to see riots about that issue again? Never. That just doesn't happen. If you look at Lebanon right now, and the protests and the riots that happen in Lebanon, it's due to the economy going into the gutter and the lack of money people can get from the bank and the lack of worth their life savings have been turned into. Not to mention the sectarianism that has completely locked up the governmental structure, the immense power of Hamas as an organization. Wait, no, not Hamas. Not Hamas. I'm mixing up my organizations. Not Hamas. God, come on. Don't tell me. Don't tell me. I swear to God, if someone in chat tells me. Not Hamas. Not Hamas. Hezbollah. Hezbollah. Sorry. Hezbollah. The amount of power that Hezbollah has in Lebanon. you're not going to stop those riots by just wagging your fingers at the rioters. You're not going to stop the riots that have happened in the United States by wagging your fingers at the rioters. You're not going to stop your riots in anywhere by wagging your fingers at the rioters. The only way to stop the riots that are happening in Hong Kong, happening anywhere, is to address the structural issues that built a boiling pot that exploded eventually with these riots. You got to deal with the heat source to that, which is the structural issue. You want to stop riots around race relations? Help address the inequality with race relations in the United States. You want to stop the poverty and you want to stop the riots in Lebanon? Address the economy and sectarianism. You want to stop the riots in Hong Kong? Address the oppression from the Chinese Communist Party. You got to address the issues, or you're not going to deal with the rioting long term. It's going to come back. Always will.
Of transportation, all this is happening as we speak. And Hong Kong, as a democracy, protects the people's rights to protest and demonstrate. But
there are no... What race issues? There are no race issues in the United States? None? Zero? It's just all media? Man, that's crazy. Because last time I checked, there's a huge gap between the white Americans and black Americans when it comes to income and wealth and the accessibility to resources and education. Or what about the studies that have been done that black people are much more likely to be pulled over during daytime, and then that balances out with white people during nighttime or anything? No, there isn't. There is a cultural issue. So what is it about black culture that did it then? I'm very curious. What is it about black culture? You work with an office full of people of color? Dude, you wouldn't call them people of color. You'd call them black, number one, okay? You don't call black people people of color. You just call them black, okay? You're being fucking silly. And most of them make more than I do? Well, that's congratulations. That's great. And you know what? I know disabled veterans with PTSD that make more money than I. Therefore, disabled veterans with PTSD, there's no issues they face. They don't face issues. I don't know what you're talking about. They can't face issues because I know one that made more money than me. Therefore, disabled veterans don't have issues. It doesn't work. This doesn't make sense.
But they need to do that in a legal manner. Illegal gathering is a crime in Hong Kong, and attacks on innocent people is a crime to be punished by the law. Therefore, I think we all have great confidence in the Hong Kong SAR government, in the Hong Kong police. They have a job to do. They need to do whatever they can allow by the law to bring law and order back to Hong Kong.
Law and order, yes, but also human rights. Multiple human rights groups, including...
Law and order, man, it sounds like it just came out of the mouth of Donald Trump, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Law and order. He'd be a Republican in the United States.
Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch have denounced the use of excessive force against the protesters. Even the UN Human Rights Chief, Michelle Bachelet, has called for an independent investigation into...
Does that mean we need to cater to anyone who riots? What about January 6th? No, that doesn't mean we cater to rioters. It means we address the situation that produced rioters, not just keep beating up rioters every few years, right? And so, for example, if somebody's rioting because of the economy, what do? You address the economy. And if somebody's rioting due to a conspiracy theory, what do? You have to address the conspiracy theory, whether that be through education, deplatforming, etc., whatever your solution may be.
To the violence. Presumably you support such an investigation to clear China's good name.
Now, first of all, human rights are always important in Hong Kong as well as in any other society. However, no human rights will give any reason to anyone to commit crime or to commit violence.
You are catering to morons that have caused billions of dollars in public and private property. Fuck off. Come on. Just more echo chambering? Dude, I'm listening to you right now. How the fuck is it echo chamber? Thing is, okay. If you listen to a conservative, they'll accuse you of echo chambering. If you don't listen to a conservative, accuse you of echo chambering. Like, what do you mean? You won't even address what I said? How about this? You can come in here right now and we can talk one-on-one if you want me to address what you said. We're talking about Hong Kong right now. So unless your position is the Hong Kong protesters need to get ran over with tanks or whatever the fuck your position is, let's talk about Hong Kong. So either come in the Discord and talk to me directly, or I'm trying to learn and talk about Hong Kong.
Therefore, let's keep these two separate.
Yes,
and
but the argument
is authorized
that
to
the
use
Hong Kong
force.
police are using violence excessively. So do you support a UN investigation to work out what's going on the ground?
Come on, if violence of this kind, which happened in Hong Kong, happens in any other city in the world, I think the police will do their job to use whatever force necessary to restore law and order. Hong Kong police, compared with...
You hear that? It's the law and order line. It's the law and order line. It's not talking about why people are rioting, not talking about the police and the violence from police officers. It's, well, you know, you can throw all these accusations at me all you want, but we need to establish law and order. So basically, in this guy's mind, whatever the cops do towards the protesters is justified because the protesters are lawless, and lawlessness must be crushed by any means necessary. That's what it at least seems like.
Their counterparts in many other cities in the world are very well disciplined, very civilized, if I may use that word, and I don't think they use...
Did he just use the word civilized?
Very civil counterparts in many other cities in the world are very well disciplined, very civilized, if I may use that word, and I don't think they use excessive force. They are being believed as being too timid or too polite in dealing with mounting violence.
You say
violence in Hong Kong is a fact.
You know when you're so polite. Hey, American Nacho. Remember that time you were really polite with me and we were just chilling and you decided to put a gun to my chest and shoot me in the stomach? That is, dude, that was so nice of you to do. God, thank you so much for doing that. That was super polite of you. Elmo Stradamus, thank you so much for the 3 tier 1 gift subs. I appreciate it.
Is occurred.
What about the case of Simon Cheng, a Hong Kong citizen who worked at the British consulate, was detained by the Chinese authorities without charge for 15 days. He says he was physically and mentally tortured. He was hooded. Later, he was released without charge and had to flee abroad, fearing for his own life. If that's what happens to employees of Western governments in Chinese custody, what on earth happens to ordinary Hong Kong citizens when you round them up? More than 5,000 of them have been detained since the protests began.
Have you really seen his confession? He confessed to soliciting prostitution in Xinjiang.
Hold on, wouldn't you confess to all sorts of crimes if you were hung while blindfolded, hooded, handcuffed, shackled, had your knees, joints beaten with spiked batons? Wouldn't you admit to any crime?
With due respect to you, I think that gentleman committed a crime in China punishable by law.
Oh my God. This dude is like he's like a bulldozer. You could throw anything. Like, here is a video of a cop literally just decapitating a baby on live television. He'd be like, you know, law and order. Like, what did the baby jaywalk? The baby looked like it was crawling across the street, not a crosswalk. Baby jaywalked? Baby shouldn't have jaywalked.
And that is a fact.
My man said enhanced interrogation. Yes, he did.
And you need to talk to him about whether he committed the crime, rather than accusing China without...
And let's say he did commit the crime. Does that mean you can torture him?
Any found the reason on the television.
He says he went through this torture. You're saying he's lying.
He's lying because he confessed. His confession was now in the public domain.
Wait, but if you beat the confession out of, like, if somebody comes to me, like, for example, I have never murdered anybody. But let's say somebody comes to me and they start smashing my fingers. They say, admit you murdered someone. I'll be like, no, I didn't do it. And then they smash my toes. And then next, they like put my arm up and I'm like, okay, I did it. You can't use that as evidence if they're bringing up the fact that you smashed their toes and fingers.
Everyone in the world, every news agency in the world can get direct access to his confession acknowledging that he committed a crime in China.
Okay,
he needs to be punished, sir.
But most confessions obtained under torture don't count. Is there a risk that the Chinese military is going to directly intervene on the ground in Hong Kong? Because you have Chinese President Xi Jinping saying just a few weeks ago.
Thank God that didn't happen. I think there was one instance where the military crossed over, but it was to like pick up some rocks or something.
That, quote, anyone attempting to split China in any part of the country will end in crushed bodies and shattered bones. That's pretty stark rhetoric. Do you get why so many people are worried that there might be another Tiananmen
Can we
Square?
hear that again?
President Xi Jinping saying just a few weeks ago that, quote, anyone attempting to split China in any part of the country will end in crushed bodies and shattered bones. That's pretty stark rhetoric.
Wow. Seems like a nice guy who's conciliatory. The thing is, the party line was never negotiate with the Hong Kongers. The party line was always to smash democracy in Hong Kong, never get a chance of democracy whatsoever, and to slowly whittle around their civil rights and civil freedoms, which they did. And anybody like Hakim, that's the ML YouTuber who was like, oh, this Hong Kong protest movement's silly. Like, I don't know if he's ever re-examined the fact and looked about the situation now with the national security law, the fact he'd be thrown in prison now for booing the Chinese national anthem in Hong Kong, that all this stuff that he says, like, well, you know, why are they out there? Like, it seems ridiculous. The extradition bill just seems like silly nonsense. He's never posted an update video. Nobody else has posted an update video. Nobody's talked about all these MLs who said it was all a bunch of fucking bullshit. None of them have re-examined now that the national security law has been passed, or now that it's illegal to even like boo the national anthem in China. In Hong Kong, that you can go to prison for 2 years for booing during a soccer game because people were protesting during soccer. And that's fucking pissing me off. That people fucking respect these fucks. Hakim straight up produces a 20 to 30 minute video talking about why you shouldn't support the Hong Kong protesters, and he claims that Hong Kong protesters are requesting that the West invade them. And what's the evidence he shows? Somebody holding a sign like, please Trump help. What do you think that is? The protest movements do that all the time. They're appealing to the international community. That's what protesters did in apartheid South Africa, just help sanctions get placed so that can help end apartheid. That wasn't a request for invasion. Everyone knows America cannot actually invade Hong Kong. They can't do that shit. They don't have the power. He never produced an update video, never produced a tweet saying, you know what, I was wrong. Nothing of that sort. Because all the concerns, he said, like, well, with the extradition bill, it just seems like a bunch of nonsense. Well, let's look at Hong Kong now with the national security law. Let's look at Hong Kong now with the protest laws. Let's look at Hong Kong now with people getting detained at train stations. Let's look at Hong Kong now with everybody that was detained and the sexual assault and the people who were shot, the people who had to flee the fucking country. Let's look at Hong Kong now. Nothing. Nothing. Because everything's in a brief moment in time. The thing is, Belarus, Myanmar, the American protest movements with Black Lives Matter, all these different movements, Chile, Haiti right now against President Moise, all these protests in international media is a brief moment in time. It's a brief moment in time. And for that brief moment of time, everybody's going to hit the drums. If you have your fucking MLs, they're going to hit the drums on, it's a color revolution, color revolution. You heard that about Belarus. It's a color revolution. What about those threatened with rape and reports that came out months later about people who were threatened with rape and people who were raped with batons anally in Belarusian prisons? Nothing. What about all the people who tried to run against Mr. Lukashenko getting arrested? Nothing. You don't hear any updates about it. Because if they were to provide you updates about how they were wrong, then their grift would end. And the same thing applies to Westerners as well. When it comes to like forces we've supported doing nasty things. The Contras is a great example. By the way, I do want to mention, it's because I don't get to mention this often. The Chinese Communist Party actively gave the guns to the Myanmar military that were used to slaughter Rohingya Muslims and then defended them on the international stage during that genocide, when over 750,000 Rohingya were expelled from the country. Now, I just wanted to bring that up because that doesn't get mentioned as much as it should, considering that was a genocide that happened and no one did shit. And it never ended. Anyway. Aircraft Sparky, come on, Dylan. You were pretending to shill for China last Friday? Fuck off, man. What is it with like conservatives and having just the largest stick up their ass? What he's referring to is that during... Actually, we could just play the footage of it. I don't care. God, man. What is with the snowflakey bullshit? So, recently I released a 4th of July special. And on that 4th of July special, I suggested that we sing the celebratory happy birthday to the Chinese Communist Party because it's their 100th birthday. And it was a joke. It was a memerino. But then, like, I kind of used it as a launching point to make a wider point about, like, other countries being able to be proud of themselves and them being able to have national pride, etc., right? And then it just... that flipped around and didn't really go anywhere. But holy shit, people got really angry. Let me just play the intro quick.
The fact that you're wanting to sing a birthday to a nation that's done nothing but bring human rights back, I find pretty cringe.
KOE.
We're living up to our principles now.
KOE, you have some liquor there.
Hold on,
Stuff the bottle in your mouth so I can talk,
Please.
okay?
I
Okay,
don't think I can do
so, well, please shut up.
I mean, that sounds
God
philosophy, right?
damn it, can I just talk?
Come on.
This is fun.
Your panel
I
host.
was
Let Dylan
interrupted.
talk.
Now Dylan just asked if he can talk. It's funny.
Go.
I don't know.
I mean, Dylan's got a look. Dylan has a sound philosophy going on here, right?
Okay.
I mean,
I am
reality
speaking. So what I'm
here-
gonna wait. No. I'm speaking to more people on my stream than all of your streams combined. So what I'm gonna do is mute myself and just talk to them
I've
instead.
already muted every.
You want to? This pissed off so many people, but it was 100% the base thing to do. If you're not gonna let me talk, then I'll just talk to my own audience. Fuck you. 100% based.
Go,
Okay.
Dylan.
Wonderful.
So one is Dylan Burns wanting to sing "Happy Birthday" to the CCP, and I find that absolutely hilarious, knowing what the CCP does, because I know Dylan knows what the CCP does. So it was just a stunt. It was just a stunt that Dylan Burns was trying to pull.
Stunt.
And he's just trying to say, "Oh, you guys aren't going to sing Happy Birthday to CCP."
It was just a little jokey joke. You don't need to get so offended at it, okay?
Saying happy birthday to the
Joke,
premier
just
of
make it
China.
funny, right? So if you're gonna have a joke, make it funny, not about a
funny.
country that constantly
That's
terrorizes
that's
its people.
subjective.
I'm not about a group that constantly terrorizes people. So, I mean, come on, man. What? It's offensive. It's an offensive joke. Oh no, I'm not allowed. I'm not allowed to make it offensive. I'm not allowed to pretend to sing happy birthday to the Chinese Communist Party because the Chinese Communist Party's done bad things. The United States has done bad things too. I got it was a joke, not a good one. Aircraft Sparky, I do not think your judge of comedy is that good, okay? Or Chinese history. But, serious question. Who should have fought against the Myanmar genocide? Serious question. Would you go fight? I've gone to wars like those. You know, the ones we don't belong in? Fuck. I didn't suggest that we invade Myanmar. If you go to my channel, I did a whole debate about why we shouldn't invade Myanmar. But I do believe we should place Magnitsky sanctions on leadership, like we have already done, and sanction military companies so we're not actively helping supply the guns to kill them. Who do I think should fight? I believe if American citizens wanted to go and join Myanmar resistance movements and fight with them against the government, I think that's perfectly fine. But the U.S. government has no role in that. I don't see it as something that could be strategically successful. And therefore, I don't think we should do it. But I mean, So I don't know exactly like what you want us to do. Like again, like I think the sanctions and military companies, there's not much more we can do. Just totally against interventionist actions militarily. Like, are you against like all interventions? I assume you're not against all interventions, but I guess like generally you're more like more restrictions, but than like the current United States military. Anyway, back to China.
Do you get why so many people are worried that there might be another Tiananmen Square massacre, but this time in Hong Kong, given such rhetoric about shattered bones?
Whatever political perspective you adopt, one thing is sure. That is, law and order need to be restored in Hong Kong. And law and order need to be restored in Hong Kong through whatever legal means possible.
Chinese military intervention?
If the Hong Kong police cannot do their job, something else needs to be done. Read the basic law, and the basic law contains provisions about how Hong Kong SAR government, if they cannot do their job in Hong Kong, need to request assistance from the central government, and the central government has a whole array of things they can do in Hong Kong.
Does that include crushing bodies and shattering bones, to quote President Xi Jinping?
Listen, and all this is completely
that is such a unavoidable statement. So, are you in line with the whole crushing bone policy? How many bones exactly are we looking at crushing here? Are we on a grand scale? How big are the mass graves going to be exactly?
Compliance with the one country, two system. Now, when
not
you
just
talk
a question.
about restoring law and order, look at what the Americans are doing. Look at what the British are doing. Look at what the French people are doing. Law and order need to be restored.
We regularly do that on the show, Victor. You know that. You've been on the show before. We cover lots of topics. I'm asking about the shattering of bones and the crushing of bodies, which is the president's quote. Do you support that measure?
I fucking love Mehdi Hassan, man.
U.S. authorities did in Los Angeles in bring law and order to the rioting in Los Angeles. And you will know.
See, he's pivoting. It's just a bunch of whataboutisms. And, you know, Mehdi Hassan should be like, okay, and I believe that was bad. Now back on to what you were saying. Law and order. Blood and bones. But I mean, like, we did have a president who said when the looting starts, the shooting starts, right? That was absolutely god-awful. Actually, fuck, that's actually kind of... Oh my god, I forgot our president actually said that shit. God, that's doomer hours.
Don't remember
when you are talking about restoring law and order...
crushing of bodies and shattering of bones.
Then you read history. History is very plentiful in terms of how law and order need to be restored. No civilized society will tolerate the level of violence as we see in Hong Kong. That's the bottom line.
You talk about civilized societies. Victor Gao, another major story out of China in recent days has been the leaked documents from inside the Chinese government that were published by the New York Times.
I did a thread in like 2019 about this. It was a huge story at the time.
On the situation in Xinjiang with the Uighur Muslim minority that you and I have discussed on this show and on Head to Head before. We already knew that anywhere between 1 million and 3 million of those Muslims have been locked up in quote-unquote re-education camps. But now we know from these documents that number one, responsibility for this goes all the way to the top, to President Xi Jinping himself, who is quoted as calling for absolutely no mercy. And number two, that even some Chinese officials, Victor, were unhappy with the severity of the crackdown on the Uyghurs in Xinjiang.
Listen, in China, the Chinese people support the government's measures in fighting against terrorism, extremism, and separatism. That's the bottom line. No one in China wants to suffer the scourge of terrorism, and we are very happy that over the past 3 years, there has been no single major terrorist attack happening in China, plaguing on the people of China, preying on innocent life. That's the key, and the Chinese people are happy about that. And terrorism is a scourge not only in China but in many other countries in the world. The world needs to be united in fighting against terrorism.
I think many countries in the world are united against what you call the scourge of terrorism, but they're not all united about the way the Chinese have decided to deal.
Well, the thing is, like, you can like want to fight terrorism, but then also not want to completely destroy people's freedom in that fight. For example, ISIS bad, Operation Inherent Resolve, which we did in Syria, massive success, undeniable success in destroying ISIS and crushing them when we worked with Kurdish allies on the ground. And we should continue to work with them and continue Operation Inherent Resolve. Totally different from monitoring Muslims in mosques in New York City. Totally different from putting Muslims in facilities for being, in many cases, too Muslim. I'm sorry, but that isn't the same thing. And you can combat terrorism through education that isn't, I mean, in many instances, at the barrel of a gun as you take them away to a camp. I mean, I'm sorry, but you can't just use terrorism as a justification to completely strip people of their human rights and dignity. That, I mean, Japanese internment would then be 100% justifiable under the pretext of, well, we're fighting the Japanese, and since we all agree we should fight the Japanese, then we can intern all Japanese Americans. No, that's fucking ridiculous. It's fucking ridiculous. And by the way, reports after the fact showed that the internment of Japanese Americans added no security benefit to the United States whatsoever. And I think, most likely, that the same would happen for the same would be the case for these facilities in Xinjiang. And even if there was a security benefit, that still wouldn't make it morally correct.
With millions of people, literally. And in fact, as we learn from these documents, many Chinese officials had issues with this too. Wang Yongzhi, the Chinese official in charge of one of the counties in Xinjiang, where tens of thousands of Uyghurs were detained, he thought that the orders from central government, according to the New York Times, quote, left no room for moderation and would poison ethnic relations in the country. He ended up freeing over 7,000 inmates, and for that he was detained, stripped of power, and prosecuted.
Sir, with due respect to you, let me suggest, let the Chinese fight against terrorism in China. Let the Americans fight.
Wait, he's not responding to anything. He's just like, well, dude, just don't pay attention. That's basically what he's saying. Like, well, at the end of the day, you could just ignore what we're doing and just fight your own terrorists, okay? Look, there's enough terrorists to go around. Like, you can have some terrorists, we can have some terrorists, everybody can have some terrorists if they just wait their turn. Look, you want our help? We'll help you build some vocational training centers.
Terrorism in America.
This was a Communist Party official running a county in Xinjiang who freed Uyghurs and was punished for doing so.
Listen, let China fight its terrorism in its own...
He's not responding to the statement from Xi Jinping where he said in a speech to officials in the region, show no mercy. He's not responding, and Mehdi Hassan did bring this up, to the accusations of how returning students need to be basically told that their actions on the outside can impact the terms of their family members in the camps because they know that people coming home, finding out their whole family's in a fucking concentration camp is going to upset them a little bit. And they had training guides for officials on how to intimidate these students. How is he going to explain this official looking at the Chinese government policy and saying, this is terrible idea, this is going to be god awful, and then he goes and does the correct thing and starts freeing people, and he gets, not only does he lose his job, he gets prosecuted for letting out just 7,000 people when a predicted 1 million are detained.
Don't let the Americans fight the terrorism in China with their terms.
Well, last time I checked, Wang Yongzhi is not a U.S.
do
citizen.
its job and fight terrorism in their own country.
Who we learned this week quietly ordered the release
of
more than 7,000 Uyghurs because he thought it was an excessive policy. He was detained, stripped of power, and prosecuted. Do you support that move against your fellow Chinese citizen?
With due respect, let's focus on the main thing, that is fighting against terrorism in China. We need to fight against terrorism in China.
So you're very
terrorism is a scourge.
Subject. I've asked you a specific question. Why was a Chinese Communist Party official relieved of his job and punished for freeing Uyghurs if everyone's united against fighting terrorism?
Sir, I will mention this 1,000 times it is necessary. The Chinese people have a job to do. That is to fight against terrorism.
Okay,
I hope you will understand that.
I understand. You say they're all terrorists and this is a security measure. But the Chinese government in these leaked documents makes clear that officials were well aware that those locked up in Xinjiang weren't guilty of any crimes. This is the quote. It is just that their thinking has been infected by unhealthy thoughts. So you're locking up people for not committing a crime for having thoughts you don't like. That's pretty Orwellian, Victor Gao.
No, I think there are 23 million people in Xinjiang, and I can say with all responsibility that the majority of those people want to have peace from terrorism, and they are united behind the government's measures of...
Well, if the majority of people want freedom from terrorism, and they're all on board, then then the restriction of civil liberties isn't needed.
Fighting against terrorism. Because why? None of them want to suffer the evil forces of terrorism. That's the bottom line. Again, I will repeat this 1,000 times. Let's focus on the daunting, overriding task of fighting against terrorism. That's the main point.
Fine. You say it's the main point. For people who are being tortured, it might not be the main point. How long can the Chinese government carry on pretending that hundreds and hundreds of Uyghurs around the world who were either detained and tortured themselves and have escaped, or have family members back home who have disappeared or been tortured? How long can it continue to pretend that all of these Uyghurs around the world who are raising the alarm bell, who are sounding the alarm bell, that they're all lying to human rights groups, they're all lying to journalists, they're all making it up? How long can you pretend that?
Sir, let's fight against terrorism, and terrorism committed by whatever person need to be punished. I think in China we do not discriminate against minorities.
You support pulling fingernails out, Victor Gao. You support electric shocks. You support people being sterilized. You support people being electrocuted, having their heads shaved. This is the testimony from Uyghurs who have escaped Xinjiang province.
Listen, I support all the legal measures adopted by the Chinese government under Chinese law in order to fight against terrorism. That's the bottom line.
Does the Chinese government's legal measures in Xinjiang include pulling out fingernails, electric shocks, the shaving of heads, a chair of nails?
He sounds like Trump. Again, if this guy was in the United States, no matter if he's a member of the Communist Party, he would just be a Republican.
Sterilizing.
And when I mean a Republican, I just don't mean like a Republican of the sense of like, well, because he's like a bad guy to be a Republican. I mean, he's saying like usual Republican talking points. Like the whole law and order shtick is a pretty big thing right now. The whole, well, you know what? It's not, that doesn't sound fun, but if they didn't break the law, they wouldn't be in the situation. Again, that's a talking point. And it wouldn't even like, there's Republicans who I know like, they're decent people, right? This guy would just be, I guess, like, what's the best? I think he'd be like a Kevin McCarthy type, you know? The kind of mild-mannered law and order one. Like, we need civilization in the United States. That type. Being authoritarian doesn't make you Republican? Not necessarily. But being extremely, the response to rioting with the response of law and order, and as reports come out of abuses towards rioters, staying on the law and order train, in the United States, the law and order train is kind of, as a messaging, is kind of on one train right now. Choo-choo. McCarthy? No. I meant Kevin McCarthy. Not McCarthy as McCarthyism. I meant Kevin McCarthy. Like Kevin McCarthy, the current minority leader in the House of Representatives. Not as in like McCarthy as in McCarthyism. Kevin McCarthy is a separate politician. Kevin McCarthy. This guy right here. He is the minority leader of the fucking House.
Is that what you support, the Chinese legal measures in Xinjiang?
Sir, you are asking misleading questions.
No, I'm not.
Oh, dude, just answer the question.
Into your trap.
There's no trap, Victor. I'm literally reading out the quotes from Sairal Sotbai, a Uyghur Muslim teacher who escaped from China, from Zumrat Daoud, who testified in Washington, D.C. this week, from Khairat Samakan, who says that he was forced to stand in a fixed position for 12 hours. These are fellow Chinese citizens of yours giving their testimony on what happened to them. Are you not concerned?
Sir, there are more than 50 countries, governments, who signed a written statement in support of China's fight against terrorism in Xinjiang.
No, that's not addressing the testimony.
Why don't you read their statements? Why don't
Yeah, you know what? I'm sure Bashar al-Assad and fucking LCC and Erdogan or whoever really think you're doing a great job, okay? But please respond to the testimony.
you talk to them? Why don't you talk to the Chinese government officials in China doing the very, very important job of fighting against terrorism? Why do you want to pick one side against the majority of the people in China? Why don't you talk to people like me who do not want to suffer the consequences of terrorism in China.
Well,
let's be
Victor, hold on.
very
I am talking
balanced
to you.
in your view.
I am talking to you. In fact, we've invited you on the show because we appreciate
But
you
don't
coming on to
impose
give
your
views.
questions on me.
Well, I'm not
But
imposing
don't-
a question. I'm
But
asking
don't
a question.
impose
You
your
don't have to
misleading
answer it.
questions to me.
You
It's a misleading question. It's not a misleading question. It is providing you testimony. If you dispute the testimony, dispute the testimony. Don't pivot to other countries. This guy is so angry.
I think it's misleading, Victor. I'm literally reading out the quotes from Chinese citizens. And, you know, we've asked Chinese government officials to come on the show. They've refused to come on. So we
How
always
many people have
appreciate
you talked
taking time
about?
out.
How many people have you talked about? Have you talked to about 1.4 billion Chinese people? Have you talked to
You want me to
the
quote
majority of the
1.4
people here in
You want me
China?
to quote 1.4 billion people to you? I'm quoting to you people who say they've been tortured. If that doesn't bother you, that's your choice. Last question then. According to the New York Times, the leaked
That's not my
documents...
choice. That's the choice of more than 50 countries in the world.
Fine.
They support China's
That's
policy.
fine. That's
They
a
support
legitimate
China's
point, and
practice
you are right.
of
Many
fighting
countries
against
do
terrorism
support
in
China's
Xinjiang.
policy. That doesn't make it right. Doesn't mean I'm not going to ask you any questions. A final question, though, Victor. Appreciate you taking time out. According to the New York Times, the leaked documents also show that the government has plans to extend restrictions on Islam to other parts of China. Mosques have already been demolished or shut down in multiple provinces. There's been a crackdown on the use of Arabic script in public places. One China scholar recently said that the People's Republic of China has become the world's foremost purveyor of anti-Islamic ideology and hate. What do you say to them?
That's completely false. I travel extensively throughout China. I have many friends who are Muslims. Islam is a great religion,
I know many black people. They say I'm not racist.
and we all need to respect Islam. Go to Ningxia, go to many parts in Xinjiang, and see with your own eyes how many mosques are elegantly standing there in front of the people, in front of the believers. And now
I don't know why, but this made me remember a moment on The View. I don't know why him talking like this. Remember, maybe it's just stuck-up manner, but The View, toilet Trump. I don't know if you guys remember this moment. But it's so bad. It's so bad. So Kelly Osbourne was some celebrity. I don't know who Kelly Osbourne is, but she was on The View and she was asked about Trump's recent statements about, like, I don't know, some fucking random, like, I don't know who this woman is. Okay, apparently she's doing stuff. She was basically oh god. So she was asked about Trump's comments on Mexicans, and she decided to do the most unequivocally, like, yikesy, just basically, like, openly, like, racist comment in defense of the Mexican community I've ever seen.
Trump is a lightning rod, even when he's not there. Look what happened on The View today with guest co-host Kelly Osbourne.
There are a lot of Latinos here in this country that do agree that the immigration problem is a problem and it does need to be addressed and it does need to be fixed.
Interesting.
But making those comments, those racist comments, do not help.
And if you kick every Latino out of this country, then who is going to be cleaning your toilet, Donald Trump?
Oh, that's no.
In the sense that, you know what I mean? Like, what I'm saying.
It's so bad. It is so bad, man. Oh my god. Like, no, wait, like, in a sense, like, wait, like, it is, like spiritually, the toilet, like, oh, and the wiggling out of it.
There's more
Oh.
jobs to be
In LA, they always
but
they don't.
Latinos are not only the only people
I didn't mean
doing
it like that. Come on. No, I would never.
I mean, you don't say come on. I mean, it seemed like out of all the jobs in the world you picked.
mean it like that.
Monday night, Jimmy
Oh god. Oh my god. That's a painful moment. I don't know why this guy reminded me of that woman, but he just gave me her vibes. 100%.
believers. If anyone believes that China will damage or do ruins to the mosques, they are cheating themselves. They are cheating the whole world, and the truth will be more eloquent than these lies.
Victor Gao, thank you for
That sounded
joining
like
me
a
on
villain
UpFront.
speech. That sounded like a villain speech. That's what that's a. The truth shall come out. Okay, buddy. Okay. Jesus Christ. Eyes are usually more eloquent? Actually, yeah. Anyway, God. Anyway, that's Mehdi Hassan, and that's the head-to-head series. But this was on UpFront. This wasn't even like a total head-to-head. It was only 15 minutes. God, man. Everything Mehdi Hassan produces is so good that, like, oh, God. It took me like an hour just to get through 50 minutes. Good content. That's how you know that's some good fucking content.